it's taken me a good 2 decades to find something of this magnitude, of this complexity, of this level um, of space for a character for me to inhabit.
How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
I'd love to hear more about when you first read the script and what was going through your mind, what you were feeling, what thoughts and what memories and what images came to mind.
Well, I should start with the fact that I'm the son of a Hungarian immigrant. My mother is Sylvia Plahy, who's quite an esteemed New York photographer, who's an artist. And she fled Hungary with her parents, my grandparents, in 1956 during the Hungarian Revolution. And she emigrated to New York. And so I grew up with great understanding of her journey as an artist and assimilation into this great country, and her being an outsider, and more importantly, my grandparents and my grandfather in particular's struggle with language barriers and finding work that was meaningful. And I grew up in Queens, which is a city of really built by immigrants and filled with most of the people that work to keep New York intact and alive. And so I think all of that is very personal to me, to be able to speak to that and share that and represent that.
I'd love to ask you a little bit more about your mom's journey. Can you tell me a little bit about what she told you about coming to America?
It was very hard for her. I think it was easier for her because she was quite young. It was very hard. She had to say goodbye to her friends without letting them know she was leaving on that last day, because they had to flee without people knowing. And she fled under a bed of corn, and she fled through Vienna, through the border, and they were already now actively looking for people fleeing, and they were shooting flares and looking to shoot people trying to get across the border. And then she was a refugee in Vienna for 2 years, which was actually harder for her because it's bordering Hungary and Eastern European, coming to a place like Vienna, where she was kind of looked down upon more than her experience of when she finally emigrated to the United States, and she ended up in Union City, New Jersey, and she was almost like exotic, and people knew about the revolution, and so her experience here was better than that first transitional period as a refugee there. But again, I grew up very close with my grandparents, and their journey was harder.
Do you think that has had an impact on you in your decision to be an artist, or how you've navigated your life as an artist?
I mean, my mother's experiences, and the film deals with how post-war trauma, the trauma of the war has influenced post-war architecture, and Laszlo's journey of kind of finding purpose and value and putting all of his life into rebuilding and leaving behind this body of work. I see a parallel in my mother's journey as an artist, and how she has this incredibly empathetic quality and perspective, and her images are quite haunting and moving and sensitive and curious, and she's deeply influenced me as a person, and I grew up steeped in those images. I grew up with a darkroom in my house and imagery everywhere and film negatives, and so I also grew up with her amongst artists, and she worked at the Village Voice, and so for me it was very much a part, and many concrete steps and influences that led me to even becoming or discovering acting as a form of expression are all directly related to her and her discoveries along the way.
What did she think of the film?
Both my parents were just bowled over by the film. We're all very grateful for this opportunity because it's taken me a good 2 decades to find something of this magnitude, of this complexity, of this level of space for a character for me to inhabit, and for a filmmaker to give me that opportunity.
These are yours, yes?
Yes.
All of them?
Yes.
Tell me, why is an accomplished foreign architect shoveling coal here in Philadelphia?
I'm afraid it is not so simple.
It's also a story of immigration. You know, I don't have to tell you that in Canada and in the United States, it feels like immigration has never been talked about more. And I read something where you talked about how there's a great responsibility that comes with telling a story like this, with an immigrant story. I wonder if you could tell me more about that responsibility and maybe an example of how you felt it making the film.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, as I had alluded to, I have understanding of that. I have understanding of those specific hardships that are not unique to my family. They are very much the fabric of many people in Canada as well as the United States, where, you know, people must flee very oppressive conditions or inhospitable conditions, and in hopes of coming to a land like the United States, where there's this sense of an American dream, and much is attainable, but it is a very, very challenging road. And I think the beauty of this is it's a reminder for us to have a bit more grace and respect for the plight of others that we are so fortunate not to endure ourselves, which it's very easy to be blind to because it is not your problem. But it is a current struggle, and people are yearning for respect, to not be ostracized or treated like outsiders, especially all the great contributions of immigrants to this nation and to the world by bringing their hopes and dreams and artistic depth and you know, I think it speaks to that. It also speaks to how artists must conform, and art, including the films and the work that the caliber of work actors must do to continue to earn a living and work in their form of expression, and how far and few these opportunities are, and what it speaks to about the complexities of that journey.
I'm glad you brought that part up, because that really stuck to me. I mean, I think there's a lot of, rightfully, a lot of press and a lot of attention onto the immigration parts of the story, which is apt and compelling. And given that it's a story about an architect that is dealing with a sort of a vicious and often sometimes manipulative, but also supportive benefactor, it made me think a little bit about this being a film about the relationship of art versus commerce. And so I wonder, well, you've navigated being an artist pretty well, while being an industry that's at the mercy of commerce and big budgets and money. I wonder if this film made you think about how you've navigated that, or if you could just tell me something about how you've navigated that.
It spoke to me a lot about Brady's journey.
Brady, the director of the film.
Brady Corbet, the filmmaker.
Yeah.
You know, this was a 7-year endeavor. And there are so many parallels of how hard it is for a filmmaker to tell a story with vision, and to raise sufficient funds to be able to do that, and to adhere to your vision. You know, actors are often forced to comply a bit more. You're interpreting material. It is a director's medium. It's why you want to work with filmmakers that you are in alignment with, so that there's space for you to contribute truth, and that they can guide and create something greater than just your contribution. But the real conforming ends to come to the filmmaker at the end of the day, to release a movie and to adhere to the standards of either the people who funded it or need to distribute it in certain circumstances. And that is part of the journey for Brady. And what is so wonderful is he really stuck to his guns, and he got there, and he delivered a work that is being lauded by critics and people who understand film and are yearning for a great film. And it reminds me of films like The Godfather and films like great films, even Taxi Driver. These weren't just blowing everyone away when they came out, and critics weren't all. I mean, we see a lot in retrospect, but there were such struggles for these filmmakers.
For many reasons, I've seen people talk about how this role in film mirror your Academy Award-winning performance 20 years ago in The Pianist, and two films about artists under the thumb of an oppressor, both about Jewish men fleeing the Holocaust. Two, spectacular roles have you delivered here. Was there anything you learned on set filming The Pianist that set you up to tackle a role like this today?
They're vastly different stories. I can see the parallels, but they're vastly different stories. And I think they are both artists, and they both happen to be Jewish. But this really is a story of a man fleeing, survived that time period. Another story was the time period of one man's journey so that we can witness it, that we can distill the horrors of the loss of 6 million people and watch one man live through that and maybe get a bit more perspective. Of course, the research that I had done to portray that character and the hardships that he endured gave me deep understanding for the backstory for Laszlo. But this movie commences upon arrival of this nation and the journey of being. There are elements of anti-Semitism throughout, but it is not the story of that. It is a story of just being different and being an artist and rebuilding in this nation, and how, in spite of the hopes and dreams, there are still oppressive forces that exist.
When you were telling me about I asked you a little bit about your folks watching the film, and you said there was something you said there that I wanted to follow up on. You said, and God knows I probably get this wrong, because Adrien, I'm not gonna lie to you, I get a lot wrong. But it was something along the lines of, well, they were delighted to see the film, they were touched by the story, and they were also just very happy for me, because you said something along the lines of, it's been a 20-year journey of trying to find a role that is this meaningful to me, of a role that I can kind of pull myself into fully.
I have done lots of work that I'm very proud of, and I've worked with wonderful, creative filmmakers and actors and producers, and I feel very fortunate. What I was referencing is the complexity and caliber of the overarching work and what it stands for, and what it will leave behind is significant and complete. And to be afforded my position in the storytelling and to have had a director entrust me with that has taken 20 years.
I mean, it feels like I can sense that it's a powerful feeling.
It sure is. It's quite healing. I mean, it's powerful and also reminds me what I am fighting to do and to share, and why I pour so much of me into my work to share with others when it can come to fruition on this level, if that makes sense.
Almost, it's because the finished product can be of such high quality, but or is it because there's a greater meaning to, like, you offer so much of yourself to?
It's about conveying truth and not asking me to be here to merely entertain you, and to use all that I have discovered of self and others to portray and honor and represent something that speaks to me personally, that I know will speak to other people, and to live up to that responsibility and have a filmmaker live up to his responsibilities, and then have a distributor that is living up to their responsibilities, and that we've all done something that is of meaning and significance, that speaks to art, struggle, the human condition, and will vastly entertain you in the process.
Well, you are right about that, in that one of the questions that I was asked, and I don't know if this is revealing when I got out of the film, was, it's 3.5 hours, could you get through it? And I said, well, first off, it didn't feel like 3.5 hours. It really hummed by. But I actually took a different meaning from that question. I think it's a fair question. I think that the films that are this, well, quite even just that this long or this complex or or of this style of storytelling are rarer and rarer. And I wonder if do you fear for the future of your art form when people ask questions like, how do you get through 3.5 hours?
No, I have less fear now that Brady's managed to make this movie for what he's made it for, and for the level of respect that it is receiving, and that he's receiving. And
you feared more before, but now you fear less now that this is doing.
I mean, I'm half kidding. I mean, I'm comforted in the fact that we made something that I think is of value to an audience that is not fed enough of this of what this film nourishes with, if that makes sense.
It does. I just got the no more questions rap, but I'll tell you this: I absolutely enjoyed chatting with you and getting your thoughts on this. And
I wish I could have seen you, but yeah, it's been nice to chat.
Oh, I'm an AI, so don't worry about it.
Great.
It's okay.
Well, you did great. You felt very human to me.